Hello and welcome to New Jersey Politics with Laura Jones. I am Laura Jones and we are so glad to have you here. Coming up on today's show, we have political commentator Alan Steinberg. He's been outspoken on his views of the importance of the U.S.-Israel alliance, and he's standing by to discuss the latest developments, as well as reaction from leadership here in New Jersey. First up, though, we welcome Congressman Josh Gottheimer to the show. The Democrat represents New Jersey's 5th Congressional District, which takes in the northernmost parts of the state, all the way from the George Washington Bridge east to the Pennsylvania border. He joins me now to discuss some of the issues he's tackling in Washington, D.C. Congressman, welcome. It's good to see you.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
So, Congressman, you just announced new federal legislation, federal action to address women's reproductive rights in New Jersey and across the country. And this is coming on the same day the Arizona Supreme Court ruled to all but ban abortion. So can you tell me a little bit about your legislation?
Well, first, again, thanks for having me, and thanks for bringing up this critical issue. I was in Hackensack, New Jersey this morning, outside Planned Parenthood, and announcing new legislation, which I call the Protecting Personal Private Medical Decisions Act. Basically, what it says is what the extreme right is trying to do, and it's not just happening, of course, in states like Florida or Arizona, but here in Washington. What they're trying to do is put a national ban on a woman's right to choose, right, and all reproductive freedom. And my legislation clearly not only says that's unacceptable, but it says that the path that the far right is trying to use to do it, an old bill dating back to the late 1800s called the Comstock Act, which was to prevent lewd material from being sent in the mail. That is how the extreme right is trying to stop mifepristone, or what's also called the abortion pill, from being mailed from one state to another, from states like Arizona and Texas and other places, and Alabama, and places where women have no reproductive freedom, even in cases of rape, incest, or the life of the mother. And so I think it's outrageous. The Supreme Court is obviously hearing this case now, and we're doing everything we can to make sure we protect and ensure women's health care.
Yeah, this law in Arizona, it's practically a 160-year-old law, a ban, but Arizona wasn't even a state 160 years ago. It was still a territory at the time. So, I mean, it's really, and it is an out-and-out ban. Is there even an exception?
Florida was 6 weeks. Like Florida, we saw 6 weeks, right?
Right. 6 weeks.
Where a lot of women don't even know they're pregnant at 6 weeks. So yeah, I mean it's outrageous that they're trying to reach for any way, the ultra right, any way to stop reproductive freedom, right? To get between a woman, her doctor, and her faith.
Yeah. So what can you tell us a little bit about how your legislation would protect women?
It basically says this Comstock Act, again, this bill from the late 1800s, cannot be used in these cases. The Department of Justice has said that it can't. Obviously, if there's a change in administrations in this next election, part of our biggest fear is that the Trump administration would come in and say, hey, despite the fact that the Department of Justice refuses to accept the Comstock Act as a way to ban choice for women, we're going to reverse course. This would prevent them from doing that and ensure that the Comstock Act cannot be used to prevent reproductive freedom and cannot be manipulated and use this law from the late 1800s to stop mifepristone or the abortion pill from being able to be used in the mail or sent from one place to another through a doctor. And by the way, the FDA has approved mifepristone. 90 countries around the world have approved using mifepristone. We know that it is safe. And obviously, something that is the FDA and science have said is good. Letting ideology and extremism to get in the way of doing what's right and science makes no sense. And of course, I don't believe anybody should get between a woman and her doctor and her own decisions with her own body. And this would ensure that doesn't happen.
Right, and the Supreme Court has heard arguments on this, and they really did push back, on just the premise of how this was brought. It was a more procedural way that was brought to the Supreme Court, so we don't know how they're going to rule. But they did seem to have some of these issues in mind.
Right, but I mean, we've seen since Dobbs 2 years ago what's happened, and this court, right, is a very ideologically rigid extreme court. And what worries me is that they'll accept this argument on the Comstock Act. We've seen IVF in the last months under attack. So you don't know, and state by state are not even actually following what the Dobbs Act and the ruling from the court, and going further than what the court said they have to in terms of banning choice, even in cases of rape, incest, and the life of the mother. Right? You read about all these cases, like a 10-year-old girl who was raped, who was forced to come to term because of the family didn't know where else to go to get an abortion. So we're seeing cases like this around the country every day. And frankly, if mifepristone is legal and it's able to be prescribed, and it's again FDA backed and safe, we want to make sure that people have choice, even in places where their state courts, like as you pointed out, like in Arizona or Florida, go even further than the Supreme Court said they have to.
Yeah, and it is, some of the lines are getting blurred. And when you go over into in vitro fertilization, even though you have leaders saying, hey, we're not against in vitro fertilization, the concern becomes, how is the law interpreted by the court? So even if people are saying, hey, we're not trying to, it's that unintended consequence that I think has a lot of people uneasy. Final thoughts on that?
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. I mean, the idea that you'd get in the way of letting someone become a mom and a dad, or a mom or a dad's, the fact that you'd do anything to get in the way of that,
parent,
become parent, like which IVF, by the way, every day provides that blessing for people, and and the fact that you do anything to stop that, to me, makes no sense, and it breaks my heart, because I'm sure people who wouldn't be parents without IVF, and thank God for the miracles of science.
That would be me and my daughter, for sure. So I know firsthand. So
I mean, right? Yeah. And I know I have so many family members myself as well, and and they're such great parents. And the idea that we'd let somebody in Washington or on a bench somewhere in some state, right, or some state legislator make that decision for you or anyone else is frankly outrageous.
All right, we're going to shift gears, and we're going to talk about something that affects everyone in New Jersey. It affects everyone across the country. Auto theft. Auto theft in New Jersey has ballooned in recent years. The number of stolen vehicles, your office was reporting, that jumped from 20% between 2020 and 2021, and it just keeps going up. According to New Jersey State Police, more than 3,000 cars in New Jersey have been stolen so far in 2024. That averages about 36 stolen cars a day. So now you're proposing something called the CARS Act, which stands for Combating Auto Robbery at the Source. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Sure. I mean, listen, you just presented the facts very well, right? Auto theft surged by more than 40% since 2020. 16,000 cars were stolen last year, right? You say an average of 36 a day right now. It's one of the biggest things people talk to me about, because I'm sure you've heard stories of people's cars being stolen out of their driveways, literally while they sleep, and it's frightening, the numbers and the level of what's going on in communities. So part of the challenge when I've sat with law enforcement many times over the last couple of years, and we've tried to get and have gotten a lot more coordination within New Jersey with the state police and local police and Department of Homeland Security, because a lot of these cars are stolen and sent to the ports and put on ships and sent to West Africa, or they're chopped up and sent to other states, Staten Island, and they get chopped off and sold in pieces. One of the things that law enforcement said to me clearly over the years was, listen, we're coordinating more in New Jersey, and that's successful. Right. But between states, there's not enough coordination. Federally, there's not enough coordination. And so there's a lot of rings. They steal them in one state. The same people come into the next state and literally hop state to state. And this will make sure there's coordination between states.
Right. I mean, that's critical, being able to communicate. And your district is right on the right on the New York and Pennsylvania borders. In New Jersey, we've had some sheriffs on in the past. We had Sheriff Sean Golden on talking about bail reform. Where do you stand on that? How does that factor into the big picture? Because it is an organized enterprise where they'll use teenagers to go out and steal the cars.
You're right to say that these organized crime rings, either between state or within our state, and they tend to use young kids to actually go steal the cars because these young people can't be held, and it's a cycle. And part of the challenge and why we've got the CARS Act is because they're hopping from one state to the next. They move fast. So, there's no reappearing in court after they're arrested. They're gone, and they hop to the next state. And, part of what we're trying to invest in is not just training, but making sure that there's more communication faster so that we can stop them from going place to place. And, of course, part of the challenge is they get out fast and they're on to the next place. So I think we've got to really look at how we prevent that from happening.
Yeah, and you're listening to Law Enforcement Met with State Police. One other topic I want to talk about before we run out on our time here is something that affects a lot of people in your district who commute into New York, congestion pricing. That is a extra fee you pay if you travel.
For those of you who have not been following this, New York and the MTA specifically, their mass transit system, which is the worst managed mass transit system in the entire country and runs billions of dollars of debt every single year because it's so poorly managed. What they said is we need to find cash to deal with the bleed that we're facing right now. So let's whack Jersey and people coming from the outer boroughs of New York with a new tax. We'll call it the congestion tax. And we're going to charge $15 a day minimum if people enter New York and come south of 60th Street, on top of course, what they pay right now to go through the tunnels, or that's $17 usually, or over the GW Bridge. This is an additional $15, plus they gave themselves the right to charge surge pricing like in an Uber, another 25% every day if they want to. You're talking about a hardworking nurse or electrician or somebody, a firefighter, paying an extra $4,000 a year minimum. That's, by the way, after tax income. So that's a huge amount of money, and New York is driving ahead despite the fact that they've admitted publicly in their submissions to the federal government that it'll actually cause more traffic, more truck traffic outside the GW Bridge and car traffic, and more pollution in northern New Jersey.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the thing. People trying to get around this congestion in these areas where you're going to be told they're then going to shift traffic, so you're going to have more congestion. Again, final thoughts. What do you think Congress can do?
Imagine what's going to be like.
No, I'm able to get over the, knock on wood, to get over the GW Bridge. That is usually my route of going into the city, and I'm able to, at certain times, I know when to go, and I know how to anticipate the traffic. It isn't as horrible as sometimes going through the tunnel. So final thoughts on what Congress can do. How hopeful are you? Because this is...
We've been working, so I've been working on this thing and fighting this thing for a couple of years now, right from I've been trying to help and lead the charge. We've got legislation, bipartisan legislation with New York members in the Congress to stop the congestion tax, to demand that the MTA actually come clean about the billions of dollars they blow that they get from the federal government every year, and to try to get to the bottom of it. There's also lawsuits. I've been working closely with the governor of New Jersey, with the mayor of Fort Lee and others in lawsuits. There's now New York lawsuits from the teachers. The NAACP is involved. You got a lot of people, small businesses in New York, a lot of people who've said, whoa, 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 do not do this, please. It's going to destroy the economy of New York. It's going to crush families in New Jersey. Do not do this. So we're hoping we can get it. We're waiting on the ruling from the judge, which we should be getting in the next few weeks, and hopefully they pump the brakes on this.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, commuters are already paying hundreds of dollars every month just to get to work. And New York is trying to bring people back, get those offices repopulated again.
Right.
This is not going to do that. It's going to become more expensive to commute than it makes for the paycheck.
Right. I mean, that's not exactly a way to welcome you back to New York. Here's a new $4,000 a year bill. Yeah. Right. I mean, it's not a great way to encourage people to come back to New York. And so, you know what? I say, if you're going to do it, stay in Jersey, work from Jersey. Let's open up more of these offices in Jersey, and we'll take them, and we'd love to have them.
Well, Congressman, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. It was really good seeing you.
Great to see you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. My next guest is Alan Steinberg. He is a columnist who serves as regional administrator as the Region 2 EPA during the George W. Bush administration. And he is a regular contributor here on New Jersey Politics. Alan, welcome. It's good to see you.
It's always an honor to be on the show of Laura Jones, the epitome of excellent journalism in New Jersey.
Thanks, Alan. Thanks. Well, I want to talk...
I'm just being descriptive.
Well, I appreciate that. Go on, go on. All right. On a very serious topic, I want to talk about your recent thoughts as it relates to Israel. One of your most recent posts, you said you switched from Republican to Democrat because of Donald Trump, but the Nancy Pelosi letter to Joe Biden is a despicable betrayal of Israel, and so our viewers know she's urging the president to stop transfer of weapons to Israel. So let's start there.
That's exactly what the Pelosi letter is. Fortunately, there are Democrats like Josh Gottheimer, who is very pro-Israel, in the United States House of Representatives. But Nancy Pelosi is giving into the squad. The squad are a collection of far-left, very anti-Israel members of the House of Representatives. Unfortunately, they have a lot of influence right now. They pressured Chuck Schumer into demanding that Netanyahu step down. Now, I'm very anti-Netanyahu. I have written a lot of columns against him, and I have said that as soon as this war is over, he should step down. But you can't ask an ally's prime minister to step down in the middle of a war. And the thing that nobody understands is that the policies of the war cabinet are backed by the overwhelming majority of Israelis because they had to survive the raid of Hamas on October 7th. That was the worst loss of Jewish life since the Holocaust. It was the worst calamity since the Holocaust. The people of Israel are tired of living under a reign of terror from Hamas in the West Bank, from Gaza. And as such, they have to take action once and for all to destroy, to dismember, to dismantle Hamas. And that's the reason for the war. If Hamas surrenders, then the war will stop. The aid will flow into Gaza. The humanitarian crisis will be over. But there must be an unconditional surrender by Hamas. Hamas is a genocidal entity. The one has preached the destruction of all Jews living in Israel. And Jeffrey Goldberg of Atlantic Magazine, the editor, has noted that.
And how have the lines gotten so blurred on this issue? The things that you're saying, things that, older generations, like this was, there's no greater ally to the United States than Israel. Wall Street Journal hammered Nancy Pelosi, said denying weapons to an ally in the middle of a war, is the definition of betrayal. How did we get here in our division?
The Wall Street Journal editorial was superb. It was journalism at its best. We got here because Hamas, and I shouldn't say just Hamas, the Palestinian Arabs have succeeded in making themselves look like the underdogs, look like the victims. They have started every war with Israel. They started the war in 1948. They fomented the war in 1956 because of the Fedayeen raids, and in 1967. They have started all these wars, and because Israel strikes back and wins, they make themselves look like the victim, and the growth of the left in the Democratic Party has bought into this. That's the problem. The Republican Party, I'm no longer comfortable with because of Trump and his alliance with bigots and racists and misogynists. But I can't be too comfortable with the Democratic left, with the squad types, because they are despicable too. And they are the influence that has resulted in the media moving so far to the left and embracing the Palestinian Arabs and somehow making as if Hamas is a bunch of heroic freedom fighters.
And if you scroll through social media and what a lot of our young people are consuming, that's what you hear, that's what you read. So as a longtime supporter of Israel, how concerned are you about this growing political division and social divisions from within our own country?
I am very depressed and very dismayed and very disheartened. I know the people of Israel will eventually triumph, but there is all this pressure now on Joe Biden. I think he will stick with Israel, by the way. I have hope and confidence in that. But I am very concerned about the influence this is having on the American political electorate, because somehow they have made Israel out to be the bad guys. Israel is a state that was founded to allow the Jewish people to determine their own future after the Holocaust, the worst genocide in modern history. That's why Israel was founded. Israel has been a triumph of moral creativity and has enabled the resurgence of world Jewry to an extent unheard of before. However, The media has bought into this. I watched Joe Scarborough in the morning, and I'm getting sick of it. He constantly talks about Bibi Netanyahu. Now, I don't even like Netanyahu, but he is not typical of Israel. The Israeli public actually wants him to go. However, they want this terrorism from Gaza to stop, and they feel the war is necessary to stop it.
Yeah. What do you see as the root cause of the polarization that we're seeing in this country, even amongst people within the Jewish community, which seems mind-boggling to me? I just have to take a step back and just think to try and keep up with some of the narratives out there. What do you think that root cause is?
Because a lot of the Jewish community, and I have to say it, has drifted off to the left, particularly among Reform Jews. They have drifted off to the left. They have bought into left-wing ideology, and somehow, because the Palestinians are the new favorite folks among left-wingers in America, they have gone along with that, and that is shameful. An organization like J Street is shameful. J Street is an organization whose leader, Jeremy Ben-Ami, gave a kiss to Mohammed Abbas. Mohammed Abbas is a thug. He is a Palestinian who wants to see Israel destroyed. He is a Holocaust denier. But these people who are in J Street are totally into ingratiating themselves with the Palestinian Arabs at the cost of the safety and security of Israel. That has to be said.
And can you talk about how is the election playing into this? There are a lot of Palestinians in Michigan, a key battleground state. How is this playing into the election, and what are your thoughts on that, making it an issue in the presidential election coming up and the race for U.S. Senate as well?
Laura, that is a big problem. There was one good bit of news on that today, and it was actually the bad news was the good news. In Arizona, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of an anti-abortion statute that goes back to the something like 1854. The fact that the court affirmed in Arizona that anti-abortion statute, that means that Ruben Gallego is going to win the Senate seat in Arizona, enabling the Democrats possibly to keep the U.S. Senate, and Joe Biden will win Arizona now because the abortion issue is going terribly for Donald Trump and the Republicans in the presidential race. So if Arizona does go with Biden, the Democrats do not need Michigan as much. And so if Michigan, but I can't see Michigan, the thing about it is I can't see them going for Trump either. But I think with people like Rashida Tlaib, I expect almost anything from them. She is a fanatical anti-Semite, a fanatical anti-Zionist, and who knows if the anti-Zionist, anti-Israel fervor continues out in Michigan, she may well influence Michigan to even either go for Trump or not vote. If they don't vote for Biden, that could enable Trump to carry Michigan as well. But I think Arizona looks better for the Democrats. Michigan is a bigger problem because of the Arab population out there threatening not to vote for Joe Biden. They may not vote for Trump, but if they stay at home and don't vote for Biden, Trump can carry Michigan.
Yeah. How do you believe that the U.S. government and the American Jewish community should be engaging with these really complex political dynamics in Israel right now? And what role can outside voices play in a constructive way?
I think it is constructive to try to engage with those Arab states who are not involved in the conflict to use whatever influence they can use to restrain Hamas. But I'm not too confident of that. I think the only way, this sounds simplistic, the only way of dealing with this is a total Israeli victory and unconditional surrender by Hamas. Unfortunately, that's the only solution. They have to destroy Hamas. They have to make sure that the terrorism from the Gaza Strip is over once and for all. And the only thing that can guarantee that is an Israeli victory.
Yeah, and looking to U.S. support, the Senate passed legislation appropriations to give billions of dollars in aid to Israel. It never passed in the House. So, looking ahead, is there anything that gives you hope amidst this current challenge?
I think the House will, hopefully very soon, pass the aid to Israel and to Ukraine. But the Republican Party is having a ridiculous inter-party fight. Marjorie Taylor Greene is an absolute disgrace. I'm not a great fan of Mike Johnson either, but I think it's going to be resolved one way or another.
Yeah, yeah. Just final thoughts. What do you think can bridge this divide here in this country? Because you have 40 Democrats who signed on to the Nancy Pelosi letter. I don't believe any from New Jersey signed on with that.
No, Bonnie Watson Coleman signed on.
Bonnie Watson Coleman. Okay, all right. So
yes, she did.
Okay, all right. So what do you think can bridge this divide?
I think the only thing, and this is being somewhat Pollyannish, but I think the only thing that can bridge the divide is a strong moral stance by our leaders in the House and Senate of both political parties, explaining that Israel is a democracy, that they are being threatened by terrorism, genocidal terrorism by Hamas, and I don't have a lot of confidence that the gap in America between Israelis, between Jews and Arabs can be solved. I'm sorry, but I wish I had an answer. Yeah. But I don't think there is an answer. There is a saying that my late father used to say, and both my parents, I love them. They were both active on behalf of Israel. My mother was a Hadassah president. My father used to prepare packages to send to our relatives in Israel after the Holocaust. But my father had a saying, "Es ist schwer zu sein a Yid." It is hard to be a Jew. And on a day like today, it's really hard to be a Jew.
Mm. Alan, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us, for sharing your thoughts and analysis and insights. We really appreciate it.
Always available, Laura.
Well, thank you. And that will do it for today. I'm Laura Jones. Thanks so much for watching New Jersey Politics. We look forward to seeing you back here next time.